Yeah. Don't get goddamn with nobody say. They tell you something different, they lie.
Associated with that. Right. That ain't in my best interest. Right. Well, if that's the take on it, I have no choice but to separate myself, you know, just due to what's best for me and mine.
The name Alfamega once echoed through the streets like a warning shot. 6'4", built solid, carrying scars that didn't need explaining. They spoke for him. It wasn't just another rapper trying to get on. It was the enforcer, the hype man, the muscle standing right beside one of hip-hop's biggest icons. When he stepped into a room, people noticed. Not because he demanded attention, but because his presence carried weight. The kind that comes from real experience, not image. At that moment, it looked like he was seconds away from carving out his own lane. Not riding coattails, not playing the background, his own path, his own history in the making. Everything was lining up, and the timing couldn't have been better. Then, just as fast as it built, it collapsed. One day, he was part of the Grand Hustle family. The next day, he was gone. No explanation, no grace period. Rumors moved faster than facts.
I don't work for no DEA.
Have you ever?
I have never worked for the DEA.
Okay.
I had a gun charge. That's an ATF charge.
Okay.
I don't work for the DEA. I was giving a jab and selling drugs when I was young.
Paperwork started circulating. Whispers turned into accusations. Before anyone could slow it down, he was labeled a snitch. It's just like that. The momentum disappeared. The rise stopped cold. What had been building shattered overnight. To understand how it reached that point, you have to rewind much further back. Cedric Zellers wasn't just from Atlanta. It was Techwood, born and raised. Those projects carried a heavy legacy. It's built in the 1930s as America's first public housing. They once stood as a symbol of progress. But by the time Zellers was born on June 2nd, 1972, that pride had decayed into something harsher.
Nobody. I ain't no snitch. I don't work for the DEA, none of that. They use my loyalty against me. And that's how I feel is happening right here. With this thing with me and Tip, you know what I'm saying?
What used to be a landmark had turned into a battleground. Techwood wasn't just rough. It was survival in its rawest form. Zellers described it as a world of predator and prey, a city trapped inside another city. The Red Dogs, Atlanta police at the time, patrolled like an occupying force, running through the blocks as if ownership came with a badge. Violence wasn't a side effect of life there. It was part of the structure. Before he could even spell the word, violence was already shaping him. At just 3 years old, he watched his father beat his mother so badly that her teeth were knocked out. A moment that never leaves you.
Alpha wasn't always Alpha. Alpha was Sid first. You know what I mean? Two different people.
You ain't know him right now. He probably robbed y'all for this camera shit and all that. Like, for real, I'm dead ass serious.
Shit, man. You know, shot nigga, man.
A memory no child should have to carry. Pain like that doesn't fade. It hardens. At 9 years old, he was already testing the streets. It started small. Stealing boxes of Twinkies, flipping them to neighbors for a few dollars. But in the projects, nothing stays small. Hustles either grow or get swallowed. There's no middle ground. By the late 80s, everything escalated. Crack hit Atlanta like a storm, tearing through neighborhoods without mercy. By 1988, at just 16 years old, Zellers was deep in the street life. People called him Techwood CED. He was moving real money. He later said he had $26,000 stashed. Serious paper for that era, especially for a teenager. He spent freely, took care of his girl, lived fast, never thinking about slowing down.
Like he beat my mom, he stomped my mama, he stomped my mama teeth out. That trauma like that really me up. I was like, I got f***ed up at a young age.
But money like that brings shadows with it. Respect wasn't something you asked for, it was something you enforced. And when someone crossed him, Zellers made sure it was felt. His reputation spread fast, well beyond Techwood's borders. 2 run-ins from that time became legend. The first involved a man known on the block as Big Bird, one rainy Atlanta night that never got forgotten. After bad blood that was never settled, Zellers spotted Big Bird sitting in his shiny 5.0 Mustang. That was enough. No hesitation, no second thoughts. He ran straight at the car with 2 pistols, a .38 and another piece firing through the rain. The pavement was slick, slipped hard, face first into the mud. Big Bird ducked behind the hood and fired back with a .45. Gunshots cracked through the block like thunder. Zellers pulled back, regrouped, then went to grab another gun from his cousin Lonzo. He came back ready, chasing Big Bird into an apartment building like it was a war zone. Loud, chaotic, reckless. The kind of move that told everyone watching this was not a man afraid of dying.
I had 26,000, man. Jewelry, the car, the girl I was messing with, Keisha, I had got her maximum 87, maximum 88.
Then came the second incident, more personal. An older figure in the neighborhood crossed a line, disrespecting Zellers' girl Keisha during a drug dispute. And in that world, that kind of disrespect wasn't debated. It was answered. This wasn't something you debated or let slide. In that world, certain lines erased whatever name or status someone thought they had. Respect stopped existing the moment it was violated. Zellers didn't argue it. He acted. He tracked the man down and opened fire. 5 shots in total. 2 tore through the legs. 1 hit the backside. 1 struck the groin. Then another for good measure. According to Zellers himself, he walked right up afterward, pressed the gun against the man's head and pulled the trigger 3 times. Nothing happened. The weapon jammed. Whether it was fate or pure luck, that malfunction saved the man's life. Later that same night, back at his mother's house, Zellers fired that exact same gun into the air. This time, it worked perfectly. No jam. No hesitation. That moment forced a realization he couldn't shake. He had fully intended to take someone's life over a street dispute. There was no more pretending. It was just survival or reaction.
By the time I got locked up, when I called the Fed gun charge, I didn't come back home in 2002. I did 7 years, 4 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes, and 16 seconds, dog.
The line had already been crossed, even if the outcome hadn't followed through. The early 90s became a loop. Streets, jail, then right back to the streets. Zellers caught time for dealing cocaine, got out, returned to what he knew. The rhythm never changed. But in 1995, everything broke in a way that couldn't be undone. He was arrested selling firearms to an undercover federal agent. That charge wasn't like the others. It wasn't state time. It wasn't negotiable in the same way. It shifted the entire direction of his life. By that point, Zellers was already a convicted felon, with a robbery charge on his record. Federal gun cases come with rules that don't bend. There's no early release, no shortcuts. You serve at least 85% of the sentence, guaranteed. When the guidelines landed, they landed heavy.
I offered my first record deal 2 weeks out of prison. Beanie Sigel offered me my first record deal, and his mother did.
110 months, nearly 9 years. And he was only 23 years old, facing the loss of the prime years of his life before they even began. He was sent to federal prison, and this time, the weight hit differently. Sitting quiet and riding out the time didn't feel like an answer anymore. He wanted a way out that actually ended the cycle. According to official court records from the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, in October of 1995, Zellers made a decision that would define everything that came next. He agreed to cooperate. He sat down with federal agents. He was debriefed. He began providing information about major criminal activity in Atlanta. This wasn't about low-level street cases. The main target was a man named Ali Bakar, accused of being a significant figure in the city's drug trade. Someone the authorities had been watching, but needed inside confirmation to move forward. This wasn't a small operation, as the federal government needed credibility.
I can't let this dude disrespect my girl, and you disrespect my name. You doing it loud in front of everybody. I go down there, and I pop him, and I pop him 5 times. You know, I popped him with both his legs, put the gun to his head, pulled the trigger 3 times, and then shit.
They needed someone who had lived the life, understood the structure, and could connect real names to real actions. Zellers fit that profile exactly. He wasn't speaking through intermediaries. He met directly with a DEA agent and a federal prosecutor, preparing for trial under his real name, Cedric Zellers. Long before the public knew him as Alfamega, he was already on record. Eventually, he took the stand as a government witness in United States versus Ali Bakar. In that courtroom, his words carried weight, not because of who he would later become, but because of who he had already. His testimony helped lock the case in place. Ali Bakar was convicted of conspiracy to distribute narcotics, and Zellers' statements stood as critical evidence in that outcome. In the federal system, there's only one real way to reduce time, and that's substantial assistance. Zellers provided it. By July of 1997, Judge J. Owen Forrester formally approved a sentence reduction.
I turned him down. I told him, no disrespect, I'm a boss like you. I just want to make sure you feel me. I'm going to pay you $5,000 for wasting your time. Boom. And I did. Like, man, you liked it. You know what I'm saying? So my point's been proven. My point got proven.
18 months were cut from his time, bringing the total down from 110 months to 92. A year and a half of freedom earned through cooperation, documented and preserved in federal court records, permanently attached to his name. Most of his sentence was served at USP Lompoc in California, thousands of miles away from Atlanta, far from Techwood, far from the environment that shaped him. Over time, the old version of Zellers began to fade and something else took its place. Isolation created space, and he filled it relentlessly. Notebooks stacked up, pages filled, songs, scripts, ideas, thousands of them. He wasn't just passing time, he was rebuilding, convincing himself that the life he came from was finished and buried for good. When he walked out of federal prison in February of 2002, the world didn't look the same. The internet had exploded. Hip-hop had entered the bling era.
He saw the movement, you know what I'm saying? That's why he jumped off the stage while the song was going, you know, by himself, you know. And he, you know what I'm saying, made what was out. Somebody's flatline was out.
Southern rap wasn't fighting for recognition anymore. It was dominating the charts. Zellers had missed that entire shift, but he didn't see his time inside as wasted. He called it Gladiator School, a place where he rebuilt himself piece by piece, not just physically, but mentally. By his own count, he came home carrying more than 1,700 songs, 3 screenplays, and a nonfiction book fully formed in his mind. Prison took his freedom, but it gave him focus, something he hadn't had before. He believed he was ready for a clean slate, even after spending nearly 7 years locked away. Most people assume Alfamega's post-prison story begins in Atlanta alongside T.I., but that skips an entire chapter. When Zellers came home, he didn't head straight back to Bankhead. He went to Philadelphia, and his first real consign didn't come from the King of the South. It came from Beanie Sigel. Alfamega found himself sitting in Beanie Sigel's mother's living room in Philly, right at the height of the ROCFella era. At that time, Beanie's voice carried real weight. He wasn't polished or industry-trained. He was raw, direct, and known for recognizing authenticity instantly.
Can't afford to really be associated with that. Right. That ain't in my best interest. Right. Well, if that's the take on it, I have no choice but to separate myself, you know, just due to what's best for me and mine.
Zellers rapped right there in front of Beanie, his mother, and his sister. No filter, no holding back. Beanie felt it immediately. The hunger, the grit, the truth of someone who had done real time and came back with intention. According to Zellers, Beanie respected that energy. The fire, the authenticity, and the fact that this 6'4" figure wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing redemption. Beanie didn't hesitate. He offered Zellers a deal on the spot. What happened next still confuses people. Zellers turned it down, flat out. He looked Beanie in the eye and told him, "I'm a boss like you. I just wanted you to hear me." He wasn't looking for a shortcut or a rescue. He wanted respect, not a lifeline. And he was determined to prove that on his own terms. He even paid Beanie for his time. That detail mattered. It wasn't symbolic. It was intentional. That single move said everything about who Zellers was becoming. He wasn't another hungry rapper fresh out of prison looking for a lifeline. He wasn't chasing favors or begging for placement. He showed up as an equal, and he left it that way. That Philadelphia meeting sent a clear message through the underground. If Beanie Sigel respected him enough to listen, the streets had no choice but to take notice. By 2005, Alfamega was back in Atlanta, and the city was boiling. Hip-hop had shifted again, and sitting at the very top was T.I., transforming from a street-certified hustler into a global brand. That rise came with pressure.
That you was feeling like so evil. Industry. Yeah. Industry itself. Yeah. Don't get goddamn what nobody say. They tell you something different than that.
As his visibility grew, so did the need to control perception. He couldn't move the same way anymore. The danger that once fueled his legend now had to be managed. The business required distance, polish, and protection. That created a gap, and Alfamega fit it perfectly. Their connection wasn't random. Alfamega already had history with Tiss family. Knew his father, a man known in the streets as Daddy. He knew his uncle. That lineage mattered. It's in that world, trust isn't built through paperwork. It's inherited and tested over time. So when Alfamega joined Grand Hustle, it wasn't about contracts or titles. It was a handshake. Street code, mutual understanding, TI was the crown. Alfamega became the muscle behind it. For the next few years, he played that role without hesitation. The silent giant behind Grand Hustle artists, intimidating without speaking, respected without explanation. And when situations escalated, he was known to act, not posture. He carried an energy most rappers only referenced in lyrics. In an industry built on image, his presence felt different. Rooms shifted when he walked in. You could see it. The fear, the respect, the silence. That energy reached its peak in 2007 with the record Hurt featuring T.I., Alfamega, and Busta Rhymes. The track wasn't metaphor-heavy or stylized. It was violent on wax. Raw descriptions of home invasions, retaliation, and burying enemies. It wasn't just music. It was a declaration of intent. A statement of who stood where. The video shoot turned into something else entirely. Not a staged production filled with hired extras. It became a real Atlanta street gathering. Former NFL players, known hustlers, neighborhood figures. People pulled up from Alabama, Texas, and beyond just to stand behind Alfamega. The atmosphere was electric, tense, and unmistakably real. It didn't feel like entertainment. It felt like a show of force. But underneath that moment sat a contradiction no one wanted to acknowledge. At the exact same time, T.I. was publicly pushing a stop snitching message. Silence, loyalty, street code. Grand Hustle's entire image revolved around that ideology. And standing right in the center of it was Alfamega, a man who, years earlier, had reduced his federal sentence by cooperating in a major case. The irony was sharp. The industry bought the image completely. Nobody questioned it. Nobody knew about the paperwork sitting quietly in federal archives. To understand the height of Alfamega's enforcer era, you have to look at November 24, 2008, the Dirty Awards in Atlanta. By then, tension between Grand Hustle and Shawty Lo's D4L camp had been building for months. This wasn't rap promo. It wasn't online back and forth. It was territorial. And that night, everything was sitting just beneath the surface, waiting. Bankhead was real soil, and T.I. claimed it proudly, but Shawty Lo lived it. That distinction mattered. The tension inside the Dirty Awards that night was heavy, the kind you could feel before anything happened. When Shawty Lo stepped onto the stage to perform Day No, Grand Hustle took it as a direct message. To Alfamega, it wasn't subtle, it wasn't artistic expression, it was open disrespect. Police reports and eyewitness accounts later confirmed how fast that moment shifted the atmosphere. It only took seconds. Grand Hustle's section erupted in the middle of the performance. Alfamega, standing in the crowd, snapped. No warning. No pause. He grabbed a chair and hurled it toward the stage. That single act detonated the room. Fists started flying. Bottles shattered. The chaos spread instantly, uncontrollable. Police rushed in, deploying pepper spray inside the venue just to stop the brawl. One moment it was a live award show. The next it was total mayhem. Eventually T.I. made it to the stage to accept his award and attempted to calm the situation, calling for peace. But it was too late. The damage was already done. Show was shut down early. The air burned with pepper spray. Alfamega was dragged out in handcuffs, face swollen, shirt ripped. That image, violent and explosive, became unforgettable. It marked both the peak of his enforcer role and the beginning of the collapse. Years later, people would look back on that night as more than a fight. It was a warning sign. Alfamega later revealed that the man he clashed with wasn't truly an enemy at all. Shawty Lo was family by connection. One of Alfamega's children's mothers was Shawty Lo's sister. Bloodlines crossed where egos clashed. He described the entire situation as a massive misunderstanding. Pride, emotion, refusal to step back. A moment that didn't have to happen, spiraled into chaos. He later apologized, explaining that he believed Shoddy Lowe was about to throw a drink on him and that he reacted in what he perceived as self-defense. But explanations didn't matter anymore. The image that stayed burned into public memory was the chair flying through the air. That became the symbol of his time as Grand Hustle's enforcer. By the end of 2008, Alfamega was seen as untouchable. The one who would go all in for the team? The one willing to stand alone against an entire crew? His debut album, I Am Alfamega, was already scheduled for early 2009. It looked like the transition was complete, street legend turning into a full rap career. But while Alfamega was making noise in Atlanta, something else was happening quietly. A journalist at the Smoking Gun was digging through old federal court records in the Northern District of Georgia, files most people never bothered to look for. What they uncovered wasn't something muscle, reputation, or loyalty could shield him from. On May 5, 2009, the Smoking Gun uploaded a PDF that sent shockwaves through the industry. The headline was blunt. Rap star S. Protish once worked as DEA Informant, government witness. Inside were official federal court documents from 1995 detailing the case where Cedric Zellers faced a possible 110-month sentence for selling firearms to an undercover agent. The paperwork was real, filed, signed, archived, and once it surfaced, everything changed. The documents made it unmistakably clear. He had formally agreed to cooperate. He was officially debriefed about the drug activity of a man identified in court records as Ali Bakar. The paperwork didn't rely on rumors or secondhand claims. It included proof. On July 25, 1997, Judge J. Owen Forrester signed an order granting the government's motion to reduce Zeller's sentence for substantial assistance. 18 months were taken off. His time dropped from 110 months to 92. The reduction was real, signed, and preserved in federal records. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just days later, T.I., the self-proclaimed king of the South, was preparing to report to federal prison himself over the 2007 machine gun case. A case that had started because his own bodyguard had worn a wire. At that moment, T.I. was already under pressure. He was actively working to clean up his public image and distance himself from anything connected to cooperation. Silence, loyalty, image control. All of it mattered more than ever. And now, his right-hand man, the muscle behind Grand Hustle, had paperwork circulating online. T.I. moved quickly. He called into Hot 107.9 in Atlanta and went straight into damage control. He told listeners he was shocked, completely blindsided. He said that everyone associated with Grand Hustle was expected to be upfront about their past. He made it clear that Alfamega had never disclosed any of this information to him or the team. Then came the statement that closed the door for good. T.I. said Alfamega had essentially deceived them by failing to fully disclose the truth about his past. He followed it by saying there was no place in Grand Hustle for dishonest or misleading behavior. He wished Alfamega well financially, but that was it. No gray area, no pause, just a clean cut. Alfamega was out, erased from the team, removed from the brand. Exiled from the kingdom he once helped protect, the fallout didn't stop with business. It's not long after, reports surfaced claiming Alfamega had been hospitalized. Rumors spread fast, but he later addressed it himself through music. He said he had broken both legs. In March of 2010, he released a record titled Green Light, aimed directly at T.I. On the track, he rapped, "I broke both legs. So I had to fall back, regroup, reset, and then crawl back." The line wasn't just about injury, it was about abandonment. He accused T.I. of leaving him behind when pressure hit. He reminded listeners of the role he played, calling himself the muscle who protected the king. He even claimed that when T.I. was facing his own federal case, T.I. had called him in tears. The narrative was clear. Loyalty, in his view, had only gone one way. Alfamega didn't stop with records. He spoke openly in interviews, especially during his sit-down with DJ Vlad. There, he tried to reshape the entire story. He denied being a DEA informant, emphasizing that his original charge was an ATF gun case. He ignored the reality that, in the federal system, those agencies work together. Then came the defense that sparked endless debate. "I didn't snitch," he said. "I lied." According to Alfamega, he didn't actually know Ali Bakar personally. That statement became the center of the controversy, dividing opinions and cementing his name permanently in one of hip-hop's most uncomfortable conversations. He claimed the authorities had fed him information. Names, addresses, cars, according to him, simply repeated what agents placed in front of him to secure a sentence reduction. He argued that because he didn't personally know Ali Bakar, he hadn't violated street code. In his mind, that distinction mattered. But the streets never cared about legal nuance or technicalities. That kind of reasoning doesn't survive in a culture built on simple rules. If you cooperate, you're out. No footnotes. No explanations. No appeals. Years later, the scandal that ended Alfamega's rap career feels distant, almost frozen in time. But Cedric Zellers never vanished. He adapted. He pivoted. Today he shows up not as an artist or enforcer, but as an elder voice, an observer, street historian speaking from the other side of the game. You'll see him in long-form interviews online, breaking down life inside Techwood homes, the Red Dog era of policing, the reality of federal prison, and the darker mechanics of the music industry. He speaks with clarity and distance, no longer trying to sell an image. He even opens up about his own personal chaos, openly stating that he has 24 children by more than 20 different women. Not as a flex, as a confession. When he talks about the industry now, the tone is stripped of illusion, describes it as a machine. One that feeds on ego, drains people through pressure, addiction, and exhaustion, then moves on. No sentiment. No loyalty. Just consumption. It's a perspective shaped by survival, not bitterness. In recent years, another side of him has surfaced, a quieter one. He's used his platform to help search for a missing nephew, posting emotional appeals and asking the public for information. The old enforcer image has faded. What remains is a man who looks reflective, worn, but still grounded, still standing after everything that came with the rise and the fall. Zellers continues to believe he was sacrificed to protect his image when the pressure became unbearable. In his view, he was the convenient casualty when the king needed distance from anything associated with cooperation. He still repeats the same phrase, real, recognize real. He holds on to the belief that those who truly know him understand his heart, regardless of what federal paperwork says. That's the complicated story of Alfamega, the enforcer, the artist, the insider who became an outsider. A man who moved from street legend to industry exile, and now speaks as someone who has already paid the price and lived to tell it. Stories like this are why Streetwears exists. It's not to judge, but to document what really happens when the image fades and the record remains.